here's a bound fretboard ready for fretting. It's been inlaid, contoured, and is ready for frets. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is how to fret a bound fretboard. So since I buy my fret wire typically in straight pieces like this, it's necessary to put a bend in the fret wire to make it easier to press into the fretboard. So I use a fret wire bender and do that like this right here. And it puts a curve on the fret wire that's pretty close to the curve on the fretboard itself. That makes it easy to press those frets in. So the next step in the process is to cut all of the frets to length, and as I do that, I put them on this little board that I've made that I have 2 lines of 21 holes for the 21 frets that I'll be cutting. So I just put my fret up there, get it pretty close, and I cut them a little bit oversized. So obviously, as you look at the fretboard, as you go up the fretboard, the frets are going to be shorter. So what I do is I just take my first cut and get the second one just a little bit shorter, and continue to go like that. As I go ahead and put them in my little holder. I'll just continue doing this until I get all 21 frets cut. So the next step would be to undercut the ends of both ends of the frets to fit over the binding that's on this fretboard. To do that, I've got this little fret nipper, and I just have to put it in there like this, and it trims that tang, and I'll do that to both ends. Just repeat that process on each one of the frets before I go to the next step. Now the fret nipper doesn't perfectly clean that tang off, and so I like to file that by hand. I do that at my little vise here with a fine tooth file, and then just carefully file that as flat as I can to remove any burrs that the fret nipper left. Do that, of course, to both ends of each fret. A little bit of a time-consuming process, but I like doing it because I know that there's not going to be any little hairline gap between the bottom of my fret and the binding. So you can see there it's nice and smooth. So we're ready to press the frets in now, and I like to put a tiny drop of medium super glue on each end, just to make sure that seats the fret nicely against the binding. And then I'll tap them in just on the ends. Get that into position and give it a little tap both ends before I take it to my press. Alright, so after the frets are tapped into place, I bring it to my arbor press, get it lined up, and then I just give it a good snug press. That presses it in. Any super glue I just wipe off. Well, normally I'd install all of the frets, and all of them would have a similar overhang here, which of course has to be clipped off, and I use my end nippers to do that. I just come in here and trim that off of both sides. I'll do that down the entire fretboard on both sides, and that still leaves a very rough edge that has to be filed, and that'll be the next step that we'll show you. Okay, so we've installed a few more of the frets here, and now the next step is to dress those fret ends, and to do that I mount it to this to a hardwood board here. I do that with 2-sided tape. just to where it's stable while I work on it. So I'll put my fretboard on there like so. So with my fret file, I just start working the ends of these frets until I've got them filed flush with the edge of my binding. And then once I have those ends filed flush, I'll put a slight bevel on it, about a 30-degree bevel, again with my fret file. And once that's done, then I've got a board that I've got 120 grit laminated to one side and 320 to the other side. So I'll go just a little bit finer on those beveled edges, first with the 120 and then the 320. That gives it a pretty nice finish on the edge. I go until I just start seeing a little bit of sawdust, and then I stop with that edge dressing. It'll get some more fine tuning later, but that's the topic of another video down the road. So come back and see us.